Take me to the sea, wash away my worries, let my soul be free. Take me to the ocean, take me to the sea, wash away my worries, let my soul be free.
Hello world, I'm Mhax. Back in IRL, I go by Curtis. Welcome to another episode of the State Copy Podcast. As always, I'll remind you to review episode 0 and its appended segments for terms, conditions, and disclosures applicable to the entirety of this content. Thank you. Well, hey everybody. Welcome to another show. I've put out 2 episodes this week and I decided not to release them. This podcasting thing, I'm totally into it. This is what I'm most passionate about. I want to get it right. I want my show to be good and useful. But I'm at the beginning of it. I feel like I've gotten all the logistics out of the way. I can create a show, start to finish. I have kind of enough polish to where I can as I broadcast, people can hear it. But now it's like, well, what do I have to say? And I'm experimenting is what I'm doing. So the way this podcasting works is, the way everything kind of generally works is there's kind of this funny dynamic that's like the cool kids table in school. Before you are allowed to talk or before you're able to sit at the cool kids table, you have to sort of meet a certain social credit score. And you can do that by being an author that's recognized by the right groups, the New York Times bestseller list, or you can release a really important paper in academic circles that's well recognized, well received, and has enough peer recognition. You can just be pure pop. You can have enough followers and likes on your stuff that people are willing to take a chance and with their time, because it's a couple of things, right? So it's in order to invite somebody onto your show. I mean, people are managing their own social credit score. They want to keep their seat at the cool kids table, and they are probably selling something, and that's how they make their, it's their job. So you're really kind of taking a chance to bring anybody into this world and let them participate with you. There's a vetting process that has to happen, and that takes time. My show, I don't get to be false in any way. The whole purpose of my show is to be incredibly genuine. I'm trying to create a place where being your authentic self is welcome and required. It's the whole purpose of the thing. So this means as I evaluate how to make this more, let me back up a bit. So a lot of why I want to do this is because I feel like my life's so much richer for all of the podcasts I've consumed. I was an early podcast subscriber, like way back in the day. Probably the first one I started. So I listened to local radio up in the Northwest, Bob, Spike, and Joe, and 107 The End, and Howard Stern later when he came to that area, and then Adam Carolla. I just love listening to people talk and learning that way. And so I've just always done it, like driving to work, to and from. I've never been a music guy. I'm always a listen to people talk guy. And um, doing that for close to probably about 25 years has me feeling like often frustrated that I can't talk with these people who become sort of like my friends. You know, they're like my friends, and now I feel like they're my coworkers. You know, like now I'm just a newbie. I don't, you know, I'm with a 50 follower account. You don't really you don't get to engage with it. Like they would tell me, well, you're not allowed to call me a coworker yet, probably in nice ways. But I do this for like my intention is I want to give back. You know, like I want to take what I've learned from listening to all these incredible people talk for so long, and I want to give that back to anybody who would listen. And so, you know, I can do these solo ones, and I've kind of taught myself to just be able to start without a cut for an hour and 2 hours, no problem. You know, like I can do that. But I feel like my content would be so much richer and more interesting if there was kind of like a dialogue with other people, obviously. And I kind of got geared up for it. So I can do that. I can do a show. And I that's my agenda. It's only that. Like it's like I really want to I have no narrative I want to push. You know, I feel like so much of this is, you know, somebody wants to get on the right show so they can push some sort of agenda. I don't have that. I just really like all these people and want to talk to them. That's my agenda. And so that means like I look really critically at what I'm producing so far, and I'm feeling good about parts of some of it. You know, my favorite was Doomberg and Professor Keen. That was my best show, I think. That was like, and it was because of them. It wasn't because of me. It was because, well, I feel like I was most successful in what I was trying to accomplish, which was to talk to my friends. And when they heard me, because everything I had to say was very complimentary, and it really just kind of, I find both of those two gentlemen to be, you know, deeply informed on their topics, deeply respectful of the other opinion in a conversation. They had a really important conversation that I feel like the world needed to hear, and I wouldn't change a damn thing. And sometimes like if you look at the last show I did, I feel like anybody who I was asking to talk to who hears that would be really put off by like the thing. Like I kind of pointed out how academia sounds to people that are outside it. I feel like that was feedback that was unsolicited, and that I'm sure upon hearing, they're like, well, you know, I worked 8 years or what, 6, whatever. I don't even know. That's not the path I took. So all of the time they put in for their doctorates and all of the hard work they've done, some of my content comes off as sort of like dismissing that. And especially like when I'm talking about like, how disruptive I think AGI is about to be very quickly, like 6 months. And there's a lot of good reasons for that 6 month number. it will be trivial to build models like GPT-4 inside that time. NVIDIA is releasing, I forget what their chip's called, something 100. Ahmad Mustak talks about it. And that's hard to hear. I'm kind of, like I'm cool with it. I looked at it. I said, yeah, you can't replace me yet. And I am kind of overly, like I think I can see the future very clearly, but it's difficult to get the timelines right. And so I don't think today I don't think next month anybody's getting replaced. I'm saying like next year. I think that AGI is going to handle mathematics and start contributing to physics in interesting ways at the highest level. And we can duplicate it and parallelize it. We can do all these interesting things. So I just kind of am cool with that. Like I'm very cool with how small I am. And when I point that out to somebody who works so hard their whole life to contribute at the highest level in that community with such high the barrier for entry to be able to contribute meaningfully to theoretical physics and all that is so high. And as I listened to that episode, I could hear I could hear how that's gonna sound to somebody who did all that. And I certainly didn't mean to be so dismissive. And I know that that's not the way I'm ever going to get any sort of engagement with my friends, and that's to back up even a little bit further. After I started this, after COVID just wrecked my old job. Like COVID made it to where all engineers just work from home, and they all just talk through cameras to each other, and there's no more like lunches together and happy hours. And it turns out that's most of why I used to do my job. As soon as you took that stuff out of it, I found the whole thing, I was not at all passionate about it. I never was. I just mostly was about hanging out with my friends. And then when that got taken away, it was like, okay, the work I'm not passionate about. I can never get that social environment. And I'm fortunate in that I have these great relationships with all these people I've worked with for years. And I meet several of them on the weekly. We have lunch together. We bullshit. It's great. But I miss that whole, like, I am now doing, this is what, I am so into this. I said at the beginning, I've been listening to people do this and watching it, just riveted with all this rich content. I've learned so much from this. And when it suddenly occurred to me, when I was on this sabbatical, and I was just thinking, well, what do you want to do? I don't want to do software anymore. Shit. But even back then, I knew AGI was getting there. Now I'm just like, yeah, it's pointless to pursue in my view. But also it was not fun anymore. And I felt so deflated by so many projects I'd worked on getting defunded because of the liquidity cycle. When the books got tight, it feels like I was always on that cutting edge project that wasn't making money yet and just kind of. And so for a whole series of reasons, I don't want to do that anymore. And I want to do this, and I want to be good at it. And I know I can. I'm going to iterate until I get some formula and I get some feel for what it is I have to contribute. For anybody who hangs in there with me in this this early this early moment in my podcasting endeavors. Thank you so much. I'd love your feedback. Anytime you put comments, I'm gonna try and address those. That's important to me. If you'd like to be on my show, reach out. I don't care if you're a nobody. I'm a nobody. What's so cool about this time we live in is there doesn't have to be one Cool Kids table anymore. We can just go build another one over here. You know, like it's really true. It's cheap to build yourself a television studio. I can teach you how to do it. It's simple. There's not a lot to it. There's some to it. I mean, my background is DevOps and all this kind of stuff, so I kind of just take to it like a fish in water. But I can create easy instructions for you to follow, to make your own, and for less money than you. It's shockingly little money to make yourself a TV show. And I think there's so many people out there. Like I was thinking today on my walk today, I can think of a couple, like 3 people just popped into my mind that would be rock stars on this, that are in my life, that are very private people. My good friend C, who's been on this show, as you know, we did a walk and talk together, and I've got 2 episodes where it's audio only with friend C, and deeply private person. Like, I don't think he feels comfortable. Like, I'm definitely, my whole show is about oversharing and saying fuck privacy. So it's going to take me a while to get him there, but oh man, that guy, him and I could riff on parenting. A thing I'm going to do on my show, I'm going to talk about on the second half of this, is I'm going to shift in my solo content, which is basically all of it right now, to spiritual. I think I've spent a bunch of time on sort of the yin, the conscious mind, the I am part of your mind. That I want to dive into why I say it that way. I have so much to say about sort of left brain, right brain, conscious, subconscious mind. I've done gobs of research into trying to understand how all that works, and I'm fascinated by it. And so I've taken a very spiritual road late in life. I was a staunch atheist, agnostic my whole life. And then right at about 42, that's funny for you Hitchhikers fans, right at about 42, everything changed. And it's like this, I had a hole in my heart for my whole life, and I didn't realize it. I accepted this bullshit that there's no point to any of this. And it's just a thing I should passively like tolerate until my inevitable death. God, that sucks. I mean, why do we accept that? If you realize that all you atheists and agnostics, that's a reasonably accurate way to describe how you're living your life. There is no one who can describe what this is. We have to all agree that it's unknowable or magic, but we can't say it's God. Don't say the G word, because that's wrong somehow. And we just need to passively ride along a river of potentials that are fully randomized and accept whatever beatings we're given or blessings bestowed upon us. We have free will. I think most of them would think, of course I have free will. I'm totally in control. Nobody else is in control. But then if you dig deep into how somebody who thinks that way thinks, because there's no higher meaning, they are basically accepting that everything's just a die roll. And I guess the thought is, I guess what I used to think is that I had free will in how I negotiated the rapids, the rapids of the river. Like when something was dropped in my lap, like I had free will about it. These are all big things, and I would love to just sit and talk with people. Friend C, for spirituality, he grew up with in the Muslim faith, and I grew up in the Christian faith. My mother was a hardcore Methodist Christian. She every Sunday would go do her prayers, and it was her Sunday ritual. Sometimes there'd be church, but there would always be like a 2 or 3 hour block where she'd just be laying on her bed, I imagine, talking to herself. And I thought that was ridiculous. So it was like a big part of my life, but it was a part of my life that I always thought was nonsense. When I sat in church, I never saw any of the metaphor. I listened to stories like Adam and Eve, and I heard 2 naked people walking or hanging out in the woods, and there's only 2 people on Earth, and they're in paradise, and everything's awesome. And then a snake wanders into camp, and talks the female into eating this apple, and she decides, and it's the one that God said we can't eat. And so she decides she's going to eat it, but she has to she goes and gets Adam, and she's only going to do it if he does it, and she talks him into it. And then suddenly all of us arrived, and they wore clothes now. The whole thing sounded so ridiculous to me. I just sat there in church seeing all these people just going, why are you all listening to this? That's how I felt. Up until about 42, that's really how I looked at it. I couldn't see the metaphor. I couldn't think for a moment some much wiser, more intelligent people than me wrote this. And they wrote it in a time where there was no printing press. And probably or possibly no written language. So they made a story. There will have to be an edit there. I had a coughing fit. Talking a long time dries out your throat. So if you were living back in those times and there was your only mechanism to encapsulate important information and propagate it to other people was story, then you would have created a story like Adam and Eve to describe something like Ian McGilchrist's work on the left hemisphere and right hemisphere of the mind, subconscious, conscious and subconscious thought. As you were describing Eden, I think you would have just been talking about a time where the mind was working in harmony between the spiritual, the yang, and that has a feminine quality. As we humans imagine it, we assign sort of to the yin, which is the conscious focused mind that is left hemisphere. We assign like a masculine quality to that because you're like forming thought. And I think these were philosophers. I think there were philosophers and people who would be like psychologists who were trying to convey really important information about how and what about what we are and how this and this function. And that there's a higher order to all of this. And so they created a fun story that could be passed down around the campfire from parents to their children for thousands of years on the hope that one day when we found ourselves in hell or total disharmony of thought internally and amongst each other, we could find harmony again. We could, it's like they sent a message in a bottle with an idea. I can do this with so many stories now that I kind of, I think about it more maturely and more like I have the proper respect. And these were the most revered texts of our species for thousands of years. People kept this information alive by developing like ritual and whole institutions, the churches, to support storing this critical knowledge and propagating it over time as our technology emerged such that we could do it a lot more efficiently. So there's metaphor. There's all kinds of meme. And you have to be smart enough and respectful enough of the mind that created it to look through the story elements and get to the meat and potatoes of what the person was trying to communicate. And I just feel like I have a Rosetta Stone now for doing that. I feel like I want to go through these books, and like as I read so much of this, and now I understand, oh, it's just a much smarter, wiser person than me who was working in full harmony of thought, that created a story that could be passed around in this manner. When you look at it through that lens, it's very powerful. And so I want to take this back. So that was a big tangent, and a lot of my content is going to go down this road now. I've done enough talking about physics and economies and, global financial crises. And it's such a, everybody's so tense right now. It's kind of a bummer, and I don't choose to ever interpret it that way. I don't want to dwell in the state where everybody wants to obsess over it right now. And so it's a good time to go focus on spiritual and the yang, and it's so vital that you build a connection to that and understand it. It's so much bigger. You can be so much bigger than you imagine. You don't have to accept that you're just on this crazy train of potentiality, and that your life's basically meaningless, and you just are supposed to tolerate that until you kick the bucket, and hopefully that's painless. What a miserable existence. I don't accept that. Fuck that. So, I want to do deep dives on, so I can probably do Christian faith well, because I have so much familiarity with it, with, that early exposure I got through my mother. But I want to do it with friend C. I want to ask him, tell me about the stories. Tell me, he gave me one while we were on a walk and talk that was just beautiful. I can't remember if it was the Prophet Muhammad or it was, I can't remember who it was, but it was that. It was a story of similar architecture, but trying to convey something totally different through a different lens, like a whole different school of thought. And I don't know the proper way to talk about it. So a big part of my framework for finding this fulfillment, making my heart complete, and feeling totally connected with who I am is so different than Christianity, and so much of these of faith is so religion. What I think religion is somebody finds this thing I'm describing, and then they write very specific instructions on how you achieve it. And they rightly pass it around and they say, you must protect this. It is sacred knowledge. And then when people lose connection with it, they're not able to respect it properly and then understand it at all. It just falls on deaf ears. And then the inevitable thing happens. A human gets in and figures out a way to exploit it to their own personal gain. And then outsiders look at that and go, see, the whole thing is bullshit. That's bullshit. No, the whole thing is sacred and is the most important thing. But somebody came in and figured out a way to exploit it to their own gain and for their own gain, and that corrupted a beautiful thing. All of these roads to a path of like inner peace, fulfillment, feeling like you're quite certain you know what you're for and what this is all about. It's priceless. It's the most important thing. And it's the roads to get there should be shared and mutually respected. So, like, I can't wait to sit down with good friend C. I would love to do a show where he tells me these stories and then we pick them apart and then he helps me figure out a way to, when I try and harmonize them with my crazy faith, which is from a computer science background, it's sort of simulation theory meets God. I want to figure out a way to talk about these things in a way where he can keep me in line and make sure that I'm not saying anything that will be disrespectful to that community. Like, he grew up with it. He will be able to keep me on track. So I want to hear all these stories. I want to make sense of them together. And I want to do that with all the faiths and all the people that have found this. Like, I want to welcome people onto my show to talk about this now. And we don't have to. I have a TV studio. I can help you build a TV studio. We no longer have to accept that there's just a tiny group of people that are allowed to talk. For a big part of my life, that was ABC, NBC, and CBS. The New York Times, New York Post, and Wall Street Journal. And then suddenly Web 2, internet. Joe Rogan hits the scene, podcasts blow up, and now there's this whole thriving podcast community. And it's awesome. But it's kind of the same thing. There's still kind of like, if you don't have the right amount of engagement, if you don't, there's still all these gates that prevent us from just speaking freely. And I want to knock all these gates fucking down. I want to get everybody to do this and show, I want to build a template for how to just get all of these rock stars in your life. You know them. I know them. I got a whole bunch of them. And their knowledge and their personality is being wasted on no audience. There should be an audience for these people. I want to get them a platform and teach them how to do it and then do their own. Like, we all have this tech now and it's being wasted on selling crap we don't need. As we come into this time of abundance, we can use stuff like this to propagate like really healthy thought and practical knowledge for like real wisdom around important things, parenting, spirituality, investing. If we form this tighter network and we get rid of all the bullshit gates and there is no more cool kids table, we all just form all our organic communities and all of these rock stars that are for some reason not getting shared with the world. That's what I want to do. So while I think it is kind of cool to just butt in on conversations like I have been doing, and I think that can work, I don't think you get to do it until you get bigger. So, because for right now, you're just some wacko sitting in his room talking to himself. And so you can't, like, that's never going to work. I get it. Like, occasionally when something spectacular like Doomberg Keen happens, I'm going to butt in and I'm going to say, you guys are fucking amazing. The world needs to hear this message. Tip of the hat. We're not worthy. You know, like, that's what I was doing there. And then I will totally put that stuff out. But the other stuff I've been trying to do where I kind of butt my way into macro or crypto or academia, I know I've got no business in it, in that one. I'm going to just wait a minute on that. But I think it is entirely appropriate for us to butt in. But we can do it in our little organic groups that we build. Like, there doesn't have to be one Joe Rogan. We can all be that. We can, certainly, there will be ones that are just have this universal appeal like that dude does, where there's millions of people tuned in and watching. But as awesome as Joe and Lex are, they can only talk to so many people. It's not adequate. We're missing so much of what we are by settling for just one Joe and one Lex. We can all be that. Let's do it. So, last episode, I said, anybody who wants to reach out and contact me, and I gave I recommended Twitter, or you can do it in the YouTube comment of a specific show if you feel inspired. But yeah, at Monkus Aurelius. I love Stoicism, and the Monkus thing is just a long story from crypto. I'd be happy to share in an episode of the show. But it's part of my story, so I leave it there. I think it's fun. At MONKUS, Aurelius, AURLELIUS. On Twitter. I don't care if you've got 40 followers. I'll meet. We'll talk for a little bit. If I feel like there's a show there, I'm going to invite you to I've figured out how to do something much better than Zoom. There's an app. There's this thing. Actually, feedback for the community. Stop settling for shit conferencing stuff. This stuff, there's this thing called Riverside I found. Riverside, one moment. Riverside, streaming. Riverside.fm. And what it does is it does a pre-render locally of your capture, and then you upload it and it merges it in the cloud. So a lot of the Zoom-like calls that happen, the podcasts where they do interviews, look like shit. And there's this really low res, and people do that weird fake background that creates a fuzzy line around them. Stop all that. It doesn't cost that much to set this thing up. I'll set up a conference and we can jam. That'd be great. I would love to get some rich dialogue with. If you want to talk crypto, oh man, I've been in crypto for years and years. I got all kinds of thoughts. I want to hear your thoughts. If you want to talk macro, not years and years, but I feel like I'm caught up. I know who the big players are. I know what the conversations are. I don't claim to be any kind of expert. If you want to talk spirituality, I'd love to. If you want to talk through the stories that we all listen to and trying to make sense of the meme and create a logical framework that's deeply respectful of the original material, I'd love to do that with you. If you would like to talk exponential age, Raoul Paul's, all of his stuff, man, I'd love to talk to that guy. What a cool dude. If you want to talk, I don't want to talk about politics. I mean, unless you want to talk about like the silliness of it all. I've subtracted it through my life. Check out the Hitchhiker's Guide episode I did, where I described and provided very specific instructions for how you can subtract that silliness from your life in a productive way that protects all of its integrity. Yeah, I'm not at all interested in that. I mean, like, I am kind of interested in some of the new stuff. I think with GFC3 and like the what is it, Brent Miller, Dollar Milkshake. A lot of people in macro want to say, yeah, the dollar sucks and there's all these problems, debt spiral, all that, but it's the cleanest of the dirty shirts. We're making a new shirt. there is now an unavoidable alternative that so much of the infra has developed on. I just think there's going to be ways for very quickly for people to just opt out of this whole bullshit nation state thing. That's a thing of the past. I think the boomers are going to really struggle with this migration, most of them, but all the rest of us, I think we just kind of get it intuitively. Like we never sign, like, it's not disrespectful of the founders of these nations we're in. And I don't think it happens overnight, and I wouldn't advocate that. But I think we can certainly start decoupling things, governance, from how far it's pushed its way into our lives. Like, I think I see a lot of conversation that like Balaji's work. I think we're going to go to something like that. And right now, everybody wants to laugh at Balaji. I think he's a very smart dude. And I think he's given a lot of careful thought. And if you stop for a second wanting to go, you're being silly, you're wrong, I'm smarter than you. I feel like mostly it's I'm smarter than you. That's what I hear when I hear people giving Balaji a hard time. They're trying to, like, his $1 million Bitcoin bet and all that. I think there are people that recognize what he was trying to do, and then there are people that are just, you know what I'm getting at. Rebel capitalist. Yesterday I heard him call him basic Balaji. I think this stuff's just all really complicated, and it's about to migrate in ways that we can't fully predict yet. But we're about to hit the next 5 or 10 years are going to be fucking wild and fun, and I'm excited to be a part of it. And this is the most exciting time ever in recent times. This is the best time to be alive. It's incredible. I'm so excited to be here, and I'm jazzed. And so, I mean, if you want to talk governance through that lens, I'd probably be into, but I don't want to talk about, I don't give any shits about this WWE Republican Democrat thing. Fuck all that. Just subtract it from your life. It will get exponentially better immediately. And if you want to talk physics, I would. And I do it through the lens of computer science. Like, I don't know any of your math, but I'd love to figure out, like, I would love to sit down with like an Eric Weinstein and figure out how his geometric unity, and then I'd like to talk to the CTMU guy, these theory of everything people. I want to get them to all start respecting each other and figuring out how to twist their stuff together into one thing that fits together. And I want to contribute my thing into that. I'd love to do that. But alas, no PhD, no practical, so that's probably not going to happen. But somebody else who's listening to that and wants to talk about it, yes, come on my show. We don't have to wait for their invitation. We can just talk about them. And they might listen and be inspired by something interesting. Like if that can spark an idea they can use, how awesome would that be? I don't give any shits about credit. It's stupid. But if we can propagate something that's useful in their work, how cool would that be? So yeah, I don't know. I have interests vast and wide, and I'm eager to not just be having this conversation with myself, you know? Like, I feel like it's kind of fun, but I want to do more. And I feel like this show can be so much better once I do that. And I kind of want the nobodies. Like I want, like, let's help each other out. Let's dig out of this pit together. And I can't do this my whole show is about being authentic. And a rule of my show is all of the disclaimers in the beginning are going to apply to anybody who participates in my show. So, not financial advice, all that bullshit we have to waste time listening will totally apply to anybody who wants to join me here. And also, I'm going to add some new, SCP.0 is going to get a new, I thought of some new things I want to add, especially as we start talking about spirituality and all these things. I want to create a forum where everyone is free to say the wrong thing. That's welcome. And if you go listen to any of my old content, what I think about deeply important things like spirituality, it's evolving day to day to day to day. What I thought 3 months ago is so much more behind where I am today. And I want to create a community where it's encouraged to be your authentic self, just shamelessly. Just say what you think. And it's pre-forgiven. It's accepted that we're all going to get it wrong. Nobody gets to get it 100% right. And we're just going to try each day to do our best. And as you get it wrong and you say the wrong thing, cool. That's how you iterate. That's how tomorrow you get to be better and you get to have a better understanding of these like really important things. So I'm gonna update new increment to Rev 0 of my show. There's going to be some new terms that are applied where any guest of my show is welcome to say the wrong thing. And then you will be welcome back. You can just say, oh, I listened to that show and I heard that thing I said and I decided I don't like what I said, or I think my opinion has evolved to something more mature, higher order, more accurate, more whatever it is. You're gonna always have an opportunity to come back and say, yeah, last time I was on your show, we talked about this thing. And, I said I felt this way. I think I was wrong. And I'd be like, really? What'd you learn? What's new? We'll talk that through, and then that gets to be accepted. And what you said in the last one is going to be here on State Copy Pod accepted as vital for getting to that place. That's awesome. You're pre-forgiven for anything stupid you say here. And it's encouraged to just try and just like be clumsy and just be you. and contribute authentic you. Say what you think and say how you're growing. That's what I want this to be. That's what it is for me. I say shit wrong all the time. There's this great one. So Hitchhiker's Guide, to traversing a singularity. I put so much effort into that. Like that took me a week and a half to make that slideshow, and I don't much like making slideshows. I have like nightmares from doing that in my professional work. But it'd been a while since I'd done one, and it was very useful for what I wanted to do. And so I created that cool slideshow, and that's like first principles, state optimization. How do you just like free your mind from bullshit thought and use it productively for just hardcore learning as much as possible, and then also advanced stuff, the intervals with THC, all of that. So that was meant to be pretty polished, but it was fun. Like when I go back and like every once in a while, I'll go back and review it. I want to see what, like, am I saying what I wanted to say? And I'm mostly really happy with that work. Like I'm good proud of that. But it's hilarious the little fuck ups I have in it. Like I say transversing the singularity pretty much the whole way through. It's traversing. I called Graham Hancock is the guy who had that big show on Netflix recently, and I so enjoyed that work. His cataclysm theory stuff. I reference it for the analogy from Adam and Eve at the end in the epilogue. Who knows if anybody even... I'm probably the only one who's watched that thing all the way through. It's awesome, though. Please watch that. I tried to make it as entertaining as I could. And I'm going to keep iterating on that thing. But it's funny. I called Graham Hancock Graham Norton. Here, in case you don't know, here's a picture of Graham Hancock. Here's a picture. No, I'll say, here's Graham Hancock. Here's Graham Norton. It's just funny. It's fine. It's fine when you fuck up. It's cool. I like it. It's part of the story. And so this will be like the most welcoming place you've ever fell into. That's what I want this show to be, where you're encouraged to just be you, be authentic. And it's actually like, if you didn't fuck up, then you weren't trying hard enough. Thanks for watching. Anybody who's tuned into any of my content, I can't do this without you guys. And while I am the ambitions around state capture, my silly name and my silly idea for uploading myself to the cloud, yeah, I think that could work. I think that's a thing. In 20 years, yeah, and so I am trying to do that. But I'd love for it to also be useful and in a way that everything I've gotten has been useful to me. So anybody who is a part of this with me, thank you. There's no words. Thank you. That's the end of today's show. Thank you.
Now it's coming around, you're feeling cut down and in the ground, and so we all come together. We making a sound, we sing. Look at all this love we found.